happy Friday. It is another Mavens of Manufacturing Day. And you know what we are. We're the video series that showcases the powerful women in engineering and manufacturing from the shop floor all the way to the C-suite. I'm really excited today for episode 131. That's crazy that we're already that far ahead in episodes. But today my guest is Kate. She is an engineering instructor at MiraCosta College Technology Career Institute in California. Hello, Kate. How are you doing today?
Hi, Megan. I'm doing so well. I'm so excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for jumping on. I also want to just quickly say that if you're tuning in, please drop your comments in the comments section. If you have questions for Kate, feel free to drop those as well too, and we'll pull what we can in during the time that we have. But Kate, I want to start out with you. Can you provide us, just some background information about yourself and, how you entered the great world of engineering and manufacturing?
Sure. Well, I think like a lot of kids, I enjoyed math and science. Actually, it's kind of funny. I got better grades in English and social studies, and I had a counselor who was like, "Well, you probably wouldn't want to go into engineering." And I was like, "Wait, no. What is that?" I had two parents who were English teachers, and engineering was about as far from my childhood as a career could possibly be. So I don't know. I guess maybe I have the kind of personality that does the stuff you're told not to do. Yeah, that's how I initially started looking into what engineering was and kind of how I got hooked, and ended up going to engineering school for mechanical engineering and worked in medical device for several years. Okay. And then I took a family break. And when I decided to get back into engineering after that family break, I ended up here at MiraCosta actually as a student. I started that's how I first came into the world of MiraCosta College, was as a student. And believe it or not, I actually took the class that I now teach, which is kind of wild and constant ammunition against my students.
That's really cool, though. So you decided that you were going to be an engineer because everybody was pointing you in the direction of English, which I can relate to because I'm an English major and I sucked at math and science. So were you good at math and science?
Well, I think math and science is one of those things that to be good at it, you have to kind of make some mistakes and have some missteps along the way. So, I mean, in high school, the thing I remember is that, I got into an accelerated math program like a lot of kids, right? And when I hit calculus in 11th grade, it was kind of like a wall for me. It was suddenly so much more difficult than I was prepared to handle. And I spent about the first half of that year struggling. And then sometime around the middle of the year, I was like, no, I'm not going to let this do me in. And so I kind of like buckled down, went back, tried to understand some of the earlier concepts that I hadn't really understood. And then senior year, I took another year of calculus, and it was all good. And then I loved it. But I think if I hadn't had that kind of like misstep and had just kind of like kept floating along, things would have been different. So yes, I was good at math, but I'd say because I spent a little time being bad at math, made me better at math.
Well, I'm glad that you went your own path, because I tended to listen to everyone telling me I needed to pursue English, and here I am today. I think my calculus teacher actually was happy when I was not in his class anymore because I was just terrible at it. So you went to college for mechanical engineering, then you took some time off because you started a family, and then did you go back to school just to kind of refresh your skill set, or were you looking to get into a higher position in what you were already doing, or did you just want to learn more?
Yeah, all of that. So when I was home with my kids, I was doing like all these things that I guess just nerdy people do when they're home with their kids. Like, I was running a photography business, so that was like a part-time gig. And then I was, building crazy stuff with my kids, like, wild backyard projects. And then I got into, I was working at a middle school part-time. I was teaching some art themed engineering classes. And I ran summer camp and all kinds of like stuff around the periphery of engineering, but I wasn't, employed as a full-time engineer. And some of that was unpaid, or, it was like kind of just for the benefit of my family. So I was doing all of this like growth, I guess, and learning in ways that were really different from a traditional kind of industrial engineering background. And so I, in the midst of all that, relocated to California from the Northeast with my husband. And when I decided it was time to go back to work, like as if I had been working all that time when I was home with my kids, when I decided it was time to go back and get paid for working, I just wanted to do something to like prove to potential employers that I was ready, that I was serious, and to kind of touch all those skills again and make sure that this was still something that I wanted to do, and that I still knew what I was doing. So I will admit I might have been a little bit of a ringer in the class, but it was awesome to get. It was a different kind of experience than what I got the first time I went to school, right? When I got my bachelor's degree, it was very lecture oriented. And I would always say that like in that program, we probably spent 80 to 90% of the time sitting and listening, and the 10 to 20% of the time that we actually got to do labs and be hands-on, I just lived for that stuff, right? I was so much more excited. I learned so much better when I had my hands on equipment, when I was getting my hands dirty and learning more experientially. And so this class is sort of the flipped model, right? So 90% of our time is hands-on, and maybe 10 or maybe 15% of our time is spent, with me in front of the room. I can't actually think of anything worse than running this class like a bachelor's degree program. I have students for 40 hours a week. So for me to just get up and talk in front of them for 40 hours a week is like, I'm sure, a nightmare for me, and definitely a nightmare for them as well. So we do a little bit of lecturing, but mostly we're in it. We're doing it.
Yeah. Well, I love that because you kind of gave a side-by-side example of like, or comparison, I mean, of what going to a 4-university college would look like versus a community college that does more hands-on. And we're not like trying to trash talk the 4-year degree programs at all. I think there is a time and a place for those things, but it's important to understand and know that people learn differently. And some people like getting their hands dirty, and they like putting things together and taking them apart, and they retain information more that way as they're doing it. So I think that's a great example of like, they don't want to hear me talk all the time. Like if I am talking, they want to put stuff together while I'm doing that so they can retain it more. What is the name of the class that you took in that teaching?
So it's called the Engineering Technician Training Class. It's a 600-hour class, so 40 hours a week for 15 weeks, and we get all kinds of students here. Some are like me, degreed engineers who want more hands-on experience. Some, they're here because someone recommended the class as like a quick way to get a job afterwards. A lot of people have worked in manufacturing, and they're trying to get a leg up. Like you mentioned before, they're just trying to like maybe make a shift or refocus their career like towards something that has a little bit more troubleshooting, a little bit more is maybe a little bit more empowering.
Gotcha. So then what is the age range then? Are you taking kids that are in high school, or is it generally kids that have already graduated high school? And then what's the max age?
Yeah. So these would be students that are out of high school already. And we usually look for a high school diploma or some kind of equivalency. And then all the way up to people who are, in their 50s or 60s, who are just, maybe they always wanted to do something like this. They always had an idea that they could work in manufacturing, but they don't have the professional experience that could help them get a foot in the door to get a role in a manufacturing plant. So we take all comers, but primarily we serve students who are probably in about the 25 to 30 range. That's kind of the middle of our bell curve.
So my next, and I do want to shout out some people already saying hi. Hi, Angela. Thank you for joining us today. And then we have Hank. Hank, hello. Tell your daughters I said hello, and I hope they're having a good day today. And then Rebecca, good afternoon. And Justin, in this hands-on industry, learning with your hands is absolutely the best way to do it. I would agree with that, only because I don't like sitting in long lectures. And then I've never learned as much when the machine was running well as I did when the machine was broken. That's a good point too, because
Totally.
then you've
Yeah.
got to try to figure it out.
Yeah.
So then what influenced you to be a teacher? Because I have so much respect for educators, because I don't think, one, you get paid enough. Two, I don't think you get credit enough for some of the things that you have to deal with, because my sister is a 7th or 8th grade math teacher, and she also, deals with some kids that have trauma in their life and has to play like their therapist sometimes, which she's not trained to do, but it falls on her shoulders. And, just some of the things that she has to deal with on a regular basis, like, I just don't feel like educators get enough credit or paid enough. So what inspired you to say, okay, I don't want to go back necessarily in the industry working, but I want to help build that next pipeline of workforce? Like, what
Yeah.
was your inspiration for that?
So first I should say after I took the class, I did go back into industry for a
Okay.
few years. So I was working for a company that was making surgical catheters, kind of like next generation R&D type of contract manufacturing. And was working there, really enjoyed the work. The products we were turning out were really super awesome and innovative, and had a great team there. But in the middle of COVID, a lot of clinical trials were put on hold. And so we were watching sales kind of like slip away. And the plant that I was working at was part of a larger organization. They decided, given the climate, that they were going to consolidate the plant where I was working with the larger organization. So I knew that I wanted to stay in Southern California, because I mean,
It's nice.
who wouldn't want to stay in Southern California? Right? And so I started kind of putting out feelers, and word got back to MiraCosta that I was looking. And actually, my predecessor in the instructional role, who's a rock star, by the way, Chris Rolfson, I have to shout him out here because he's amazing and totally a mentor to me. He was thinking of leaving the role and going back into industry. And so he reached out and was like, hey, I think you should come back to MiraCosta and teach. And also I'm leaving, and how would you feel about taking over the engineering technician program? And just coincidentally, I was doing my MBA at the time, and I was doing some kind of heavy personal work, trying to figure out I had been back in industry now for a few years, and just trying to figure out what direction I wanted to take my career in, whether I wanted to stay on the management track or go back into something a little bit more hands-on. And so
Gotcha.
I was working with a career counselor at Cal State San Marcos through their career development office, and doing this kind of introspective values type of work, and thinking about the bigger picture of what was really important to me, right? The kinds of things that you have the luxury to do when you get into your 40s, hopefully.
Yeah.
And so I was working with her, and I remember I had a meeting with her one day, and we had done this thing, and she had me answer a bunch of questions. And what had come out of that experience was that I should be looking for an opportunity where there was an aspect of collaboration, an aspect of ongoing learning, and an opportunity to help people. And working in medical device fits all of those things, right? Especially if you have a great team, and your company is very patient focused, patient oriented. And so I was like, yeah, no, I already have that. And she was like, well, have you ever considered teaching? This is before I heard from my predecessor here. And I was like, no way. Absolutely not. My parents were both teachers. I didn't want to be I didn't want anything to do with that. And she said, okay, well, just keep it in the back of your mind that that is another option that would tick all of those boxes. And I had spent my whole career saying, I don't want to teach. I had stumbled into teaching accidentally in the past, and I enjoyed it, and I loved my students. And, it was thrilling to feel like I was giving back and doing the right thing in the world. But when this opportunity came up, I was like, oh, now that I would teach that program, that school, that leadership team, that group of students. Yeah, okay. Yes, I would for that opportunity, I would become a teacher. So I definitely didn't like set out to be a teacher. I just I kind of stumbled into it. And I always say I'm just an engineer that's like pretending to be a teacher. I'm not trained in pedagogy. I figure it out just like I figure out how a machine works. I luckily
Mhm.
I run the course 3 times a year, so I have a lot of opportunity to iterate the curriculum, have a lot of opportunity to like learn from my mistakes and make improvements
Yeah.
where I can. So yeah, I kind of approach it like very methodically, and luckily my parents are both still a part of my life, and I have
Yeah.
opportunity to learn from them as well, and they're all too eager to give me all of their years of teaching advice.
That's really cool that, and some of the best teachers that I've had because I'm a technical writer. So when I have to get stories and stuff and get all the technical information, like engineers are really, yeah, some of them, well, a lot of them are kind of socially awkward. But when you sit down and you want to pick their brain and the whole part of educating someone else on what they're doing, they're very passionate about it and get really excited about it. So it's a lot of fun. If you can break through that hard shell, it's a lot of fun to talk to them because you learn so much and just the way they think it's awesome.
Oh
It's
yeah,
really
no,
fun.
definitely. And I feel like I have now multiple educational experiences in my background, and
Mhm,
I had some really positive experiences with instructors and professors who were
mhm,
amazing and had that enthusiasm and kind of were able to bring their students into that enthusiasm. And that's my goal, is to be that kind of instructor, right? And also
mhm.
I feel like I went to engineering school in the 90s, and it wasn't perfect. There were like, I don't know, 7 men for every woman, maybe, in most of my
Yeah.
classes. And so some of the environment that I was in, the atmosphere that was set, the tone of the room was not always like constructive. And so, man, I have a hard line of like what's acceptable and what's not acceptable in my classroom, because I'm like, yeah, no, we're gonna have higher expectations here, and we're going to make sure that we're making sure every voice in the room is heard when they want to be heard, and all of that.
I so grateful to hear you say that because I feel like there's still some of that old behavior happening currently, and there's a lot of women. And I actually just learned this stat last week or the week before? I was at an event and they were sharing some data about the percentage of women in engineering and manufacturing roles, and unfortunately, the percentage is stagnant right now, and they're actually seeing a little bit of a decline of women engineers. So it's like we got to do a better job, like showing that we are here. You do have a space here. So I'm really glad that you're making those boundaries and those rules and setting those expectations. And I think it overall, I think too, it benefits guys because then they can learn how they can be better allies and mentors for women that are in the industry and just kind of be a better person overall themselves as well too. It helps with their skill set. So
Yeah. Oh,
um,
absolutely. Yeah. And I'll just add, like, I think that, if I set the tone here and students have the expectation that that's what the world is like,
yeah,
because that's what the world is like here, then they're going to be agents of that, right? They're going to go spread that
right.
idea and that attitude through North County manufacturing.
I love that. I do want to bring up Angela's comment. She said one of my professors was not only a mentor, but definitely influenced where my career took me. So that's a huge compliment to any teacher that if you can inspire that one person. That's Muhammad said, thank you for this informative live. You're welcome, Muhammad. And she goes, I love your poster, Katie.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I think I might have seen this poster on another episode of Mavens of Manufacturing. It says I want to be an engineer just like my mom.
I
Yeah,
love
I love
that.
it. I saw it
Super
and
cool.
I blew it up at Staples to like poster size so that I
That's
could
really cool.
have it
Well,
on my
I
wall.
do want to get more into like how you're connecting um, your class, your students with the employers that are in your area. So, what sort of things are you doing to really develop strong partnerships with some of the companies that are looking for that skilled talent that you could possibly provide them?
Yeah. So first of all, I should say this program is on the not for credit side of MiraCosta College. And it
Okay.
started as a career development program because there was this identified need for qualified engineering technicians in San Diego County. So This
Okay.
program was born of industry need. So from the get-go, it was linked and embedded in industry. The initial curriculum work came out of a focus group of industry representatives who said, these are the things that we need engineering technicians to know.
Okay.
So we're definitely, that embeddedness has continued through all the years and is probably, stronger than it's ever been. I think at last count, we interact regularly with probably about 80 people from about 80 different companies.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And my personal goal, I saw an ad for an engineering program a couple of years ago. I'm not going to say the name of the school, but they said by the time students graduate, they will have interacted with 20 companies. And I thought, I can do that in 15 weeks. So my goal for every student in each cohort is that they've had one-on-one interaction with representatives from at least 20 companies over the course of the 15 weeks. So we do that a few different ways. Some of them are like on site here. We'll have visitors come in and speak about their company. I run a monthly series called New Tech Tuesday, where we bring in representatives of industry to talk about what they're doing. We do a mock interview workshop. We have people from industry come in and conduct those mock interviews.
I love that.
But the big one is once a week, we take the show on the road. So we have all the students transport themselves to some local manufacturing plant. And our industry partners have been really generous and invite us in for tours. And so that really serves two purposes for us. First, the students get to see what they're learning in context, right? So we're walking through, and we have a couple universal robots here. We walk through a plant, they see a UR3E, they're like, oh my God, that's our robot. I'm like, yeah, why do you think we bought that one? It's a real industry robot. So
that's cool.
There's that, right? They also see like the smaller things, like what does the kitchen look like? What kind of a chair would I be sitting in? How big is the parking lot? Are the parking spots big enough for my car? Like all kinds of little things that you don't necessarily think of, but make the students more interested in working at that plant, right? Because the mystery is gone. It's not just this like black box that they're going to drop into for the next 1 to 25 years. It's something that they've seen, that they've known. They know some people there now.
Yeah.
So that kind of like last mile toward employment, that's one side of the goal of those visits. The other side is, for me, that's my chance to see what's happening in North County manufacturing. So I want to see like, how are their processes evolving? Are they adding a cobot? Are there like certain processes where I see, oh, it looks like you need more hands there? Or we've had times where we're walking through and we see something and it turns into a project for the class, right? We say, oh, why don't we design a better way for that process to be done? And there's also the softer side of like, I get to see, are they treating their employees well? Does it seem like a collaborative environment? Is there a culture of respect in this place? So we're picky about the companies that we work with, but definitely I want to see what's going on so that I can adapt the curriculum that I'm teaching to fit what industry needs right now, what the hiring is going to look like by the 15th week when these students are leaving. And also I want the students to see what the work actually looks like in practice. Because some of them, like I said, they have an idea that they want to work in manufacturing, but a lot of students don't really know what that looks like. They haven't seen the inside of a manufacturing facility. Maybe they've seen like how it's made or some other stuff on like YouTube, but they haven't seen the practical, like this is what workstations look like. This is how tools are 5S, stuff like that.
Well, I think that's really clever too, because it's kind of like what kids would do. I call them kids. I gotta stop. Young adults would do. That's the mom in me. Everybody younger than me.
I do the same thing.
Like, they're young adults. But like, with my daughter, when she was getting ready to go to college, we would go to different college campuses because she wanted to know that the vibe was her vibe and she was compatible with the teachers and the classrooms and the environment. So it's kind of like doing that. So I think that's really clever. And even for you as a learning experience for you, and then trying to connect that with how you're teaching your course. So like, oh, let's make this a project. I think that's Awesome. So
Yeah,
you're
and
connecting the
that's
dots
the
there.
beauty of being on the not-for-credit side. So in the state of California, there are different educational codes for the credit side of colleges,
Okay.
community colleges, and the not-for-credit side of community colleges. So because we're the not-for-credit side, we can make curriculum syllabus changes very quickly. We don't have to go through like an extensive curriculum review process because it's
Gotcha.
meant to be industry focused, right? So as long as I can demonstrate that we're making the change because that's what industry is asking for, it's very easy for us to say, oh, okay, these guys are going to be hiring, 5 robot programmers at the end of December. So we can take this cohort of students, focus them in on robotics programming, and now we have people who are hopefully, interested and qualified for the specific roles that are coming up. And that's really a beautiful thing. I mean, that's part of the reason why I was like, yes, I will teach here,
Yeah.
because we can be so agile and because we're so embedded in industry. Like, who gets to call up a bunch of companies and say like, hey, can I come in and just see what you're doing? Well, you probably
Yeah.
can.
Yeah.
But
But no,
most people probably can't.
but that's why I like manufacturing so much, because you can, if you're, there are some restrictions, and I just learned this not too long ago. I actually had someone come to where I live to do a tour, and I was trying to get a tour in one of the companies that builds submarines, submarine engines and Navy carrier engines, and they wouldn't get back to me. And normally they were really good at getting back to me and saying, yeah, you can come, or no, you can't come, because they work with military. So it's like there are NDA stuff there available.
Yeah.
Well, they just completely ghosted me. And I'm like, I don't know what the problem is. Well, the person that I invited is from another country. And
Oh,
they're like, it's probably a security issue. I was like, I didn't even think of that. So
yeah.
there are some restrictions. It just depends on like what product line they're working on, because there is a Harley Davidson facility that I want to go see on the East Coast, but right now they're under embargo for the rest of the year, so they're not even allowing anybody to come in. So it makes sense, but generally people are just like, no, come on in. We want to show you what we're doing and how we're doing it. And Mohammed brought this up. He's like, I reckon students should totally get a taste of different fields in high school or college. Yeah, but it doesn't happen. And it can help them make decisions quicker and not waste their precious time. I mean, getting some real job experience for a bit. So when you're doing all this stuff, are they getting, you said it's no credit, but are there opportunities for them to get paid while they're learning, or is it strictly just for the experience? And then do they get some certification that they can like put on their resumes or bring to potential employers?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's not for credit. A couple different answers to your question. First of all, within the Technology Career Institute, we have a bunch of different programs besides the engineering tech program. So
Okay.
this certificate, the one that they get at the end of the class that I teach, is stackable with some other credentials as well. And we have these like compound credentials that involve a bunch of different certification
Okay.
combinations. And yeah, they get a certification that they can take to their employer. There's no like national engineering technician certification program that I'm aware of right now. So we don't teach to like a global standard. We teach to the expectations of North County manufacturing. So in
Gotcha.
that way, it's almost like tailored to the people who are going to be hiring the students. And we're very fortunate at this point. We've got a great reputation in the area. And so the certification means something to companies that are familiar with our program, that are,
Yeah.
maybe have hired our students before. Every cohort we graduate, we have more of a reach, which is nice, right?
Yeah.
But we also don't have, like, San Diego County manufacturing is not, we're not a huge, like, what you think of as like a factory town, company town kind of place, right? It's a very like entrepreneurial area. They call it an innovation economy. So the companies that we're working with, they don't necessarily, they're not even 20 years old, let alone like 10 or 5 or sometimes
Oh,
even 1 year old.
interesting.
Sometimes they're just startups, right? They're just trying to like
Right.
prove out the concept for a product. So we have this kind of sweet spot of employers that have maybe like 50 to 100 employees. More importantly, the companies have to be like culturally ready, structurally ready to accept that a technician doesn't necessarily need to have a college degree. And that's a magical formula for us, right? That kind of smaller size,
Right.
ready to understand that, somebody can come in with a variety of different background experiences that could potentially qualify them to work there. So among those companies, we have a pretty strong internship program going. So that's one way that students can get paid while they're in the program. We don't have any program to like pay them full time while they're here, but they can take on some work hours through an internship program during the week. And we have about, I think at last check, it was like 68% of students typically participate in this internship program. And they do it in varying capacities. Like some will log hours during the class. So
Okay.
they'll be out of the classroom for 4 hours or 8 hours a week. And they'll be working on site with an industry partner as part of an internship. Some will bank all the hours and they'll do them all at the end of the class,
Okay.
if they want to do something like that. But yeah, that's one of our big obstacles to getting people into the class. Like we host a tour here every week, and so we get a lot of community members who come through who are just interested in enrolling in whatever caught their eye. And a lot of times they come into my lab and they're like, this is amazing. This is what I want to do. This is so cool. I want to like 3D print and use robots and solder. And like they get all excited. And then we tell them that it's a 40-hour a week commitment. And they're like, oh, I can't quit my job to do this. So yeah, it would be a beautiful
Wow.
thing if we could pay them to be here, because we would probably like
Yeah.
quadruple our enrollment immediately. But yeah, it
Right.
doesn't work that way.
So Justin had a question. He said, is it not open to high school students like right
You
now?
have to be out of high school already.
Okay. So he said, since the program is not currently open to high school students, do you think there will be a possibility in the future for their inclusion? It could really help get them interested from an early age and help close the skills gap. So is there anything that you do in terms of like partnering with the local high schools to like bring awareness of, like you did mention that you do tours and have them come in and see your lab and everything, but are there other things that you're doing with the high
Absolutely.
schools?
Yeah. So we do a lot of outreach at high schools. So whenever there's a career fair, college fair, we try to send someone from the staff here to be a representative. We've also got a couple schools in the area that have a Project Lead the Way engineering curriculum track. So we partner with those teachers as well. And then I'm part of the FIRST Robotics community as well. So I've got some partnerships at local schools, just people who are working with robotics kids. And we've had people come through here from all of those efforts. But we do, because of the nature of the schedule, the 8 to 4:30 thing, that would make it difficult for high schoolers to participate fully because, they're kind of already obligated during those hours.
Right.
But we do have some like evening and weekend classes that we offer that will sometimes have high school students enroll in as like a transition into the MiraCosta programs. And yeah, I feel like there was something else I was going to tell you there, but I lost my train of thought. Sorry.
No, that's no worries. Well, I was, because you have on your LinkedIn profile that you're teaching some of the innovative classroom techniques and oh my gosh, I need more coffee. Methodologies. Still doesn't sound right. That you use to engage your adult learners. So what sort of like techniques are you teaching them, and how are you helping them? Like you did mention the mock interviews, which is really good for soft skills, because I think some of the kids are so used to, like, I gotta stop calling them kids, are so used to talking on their phones via text. And I'm only using my daughter as an example for this because she had a hard time like doing face-to-face communication for a while, because I was like, honey, if you want to work somewhere, you gotta be able to talk to them. You can't do an interview via text. Like you have to talk to them with words. And she's like, okay. So I love the mock interview stuff, but what other classroom techniques are you using to get them ready for these positions?
Yeah, I mean, so like I said, I definitely wouldn't want to lecture for 40 hours a week. That would be awful. So I run the class like I ran a department at work. So basically the week starts with a list of tasks, and I use Trello for the management of those tasks. So every student has a card on Trello. It's just like a project management application. And that task card has all the tasks that they're going to need to do over the course of the week. And it's the student's responsibility to manage their time responsibly so that they get everything finished by Friday at 4:30. So
Okay.
some of the tasks are going to need some kind of introduction, right? So we start every morning with a quick lecture or at least a check-in. And then usually when we come back from lunch, we also regroup for either a lecture, some kind of intro. And then other than that, they're really working independently, or they're collaborating in small groups. So I very purposefully put the onus on the students to figure out how to do that, and I step in when I need to. But for the most part, if they're chugging away, if it sounds constructive, I let them keep working. And then I will go to them, and when I'm going to students as they're working, my goal is like to contextualize what they're doing, right? So we've had maybe a little bit of a conversation about, say, a piece of equipment. Maybe we've reviewed like safety guidelines, baseline operation. Maybe I've done a demo. Maybe I've talked about what they're going to be doing with this and why it's important. And then I want to get them on the equipment as quickly as possible. And then when we talk about it, we can speak so much more meaningfully about what's actually happening, right?
Yeah.
And I'm trying to do things like model constructive technical communication, right? I'm asking them what's going on, what do they notice, what are they wondering about the situation, and I'm trying to just give them like an appropriate amount of information to help them move forward without just giving them all the answers. So I think of it like dropping breadcrumbs in the forest. I'm just trying to like help them keep moving. Because really through that, I want them to be developing the tools that they're going to need when I'm not there, right? To solve a problem. And so much of this class is troubleshooting. It's like getting yourself into a situation where the path forward is not clear. Like if I had to put a banner line on this class, it would be like, we're going to make you uncomfortable. Because that's where the good learning happens, right? You want to kind of like think you get it and then have it kind of fall apart and then figure out how to get it all back together again, because that's how you get good, deep, memorable learning. And so that's kind of a soft answer, because it isn't like, oh, I have this like soft skills curriculum where we do 5 hours on perseverance and 3 hours on, keeping cool under pressure. It's not like that. It's more like kind of a vein that runs through everything that we do. And I'll step in when I need to, right? If I have a student that I notice is having trouble kind of time management, or maybe they're not seeing the progression, like they're not taking the lessons that they used previously and applying them forward, I'll kind of like intervene in a more intentional way. But most of the time, I'm trying to treat them the way that I would treat employees, because though this is school, I'm trying to model what they're going to get in industry. And so that means like having an expectation of independence, being able to work and manage their time and manage their resources, purposefully. And then the other thing I'll say is, like, I think when people think of technical school, they imagine a row of robots and like a row of PLC trainers and a row of whatever. We don't have a row of anything. This is not a big school. I have one lab. It's not like we finish in the robotics room and we all go over to the other, the PLC room. And so part of this like flexible schedule thing is self-serving, right? I have one FANUC arm. And so while one student is programming it, I can't have 17 students just standing there watching that person program. So there are always multiple assignments that you can be working on, and you float through them at your own pace and spend as much time as you need to get to the finish line or get the understanding that you need from that task.
Well, I think that's really cool too. And like you mentioned, so you have FANUC, you have Universal Robotics, you have additive manufacturing printers. What else? What other technologies are you working with?
So we have some Festo didactic instructional stations. We have everything runs on an Allen Bradley PLC. So we run Rockwell software. We do some CAD, so students learn Fusion 360 and also SolidWorks, just, basic modeling. It's not like a CAD
Yeah.
certification class or anything like that, but we want them to be able to like design a quick
Understand.
fixture and then go
Right.
3D print it. We've got a laser cutter. We do a lot with Arduinos, not necessarily because they're going to go out into industry and use Arduinos, but a lot of like basic electronics you can learn in a really fun way by using an Arduino, and also a lot of the logic stuff that comes up later in the class. We can
Yeah.
initially do it on the Arduino, and it's a little bit more
Mm-hmm.
accessible, and then we can apply what we learned on the PLCs. We use it as like a ramp up tool. And yeah, I mean, I have a supply room. One of my favorite things to do is just go in there and like gather whatever junk I've saved and turn it into a lab.
But I think that's really cool because you're giving them a well-rounded experience. And, I like how you described your teaching style too, because I think one of the fallbacks of the 4-year route is it is so heavily lectured. And when kids get up done with their degree, and this was a personal experience of mine, when I got done with my degree, I didn't really know what I was supposed to do after that. And a lot of the stuff that I learned was when I got involved with the actual industry stuff and had to learn the jargon and how things were written out. And, depending on the company, it's different. And if it's a different language, then it's different. And I feel like that's the same. Like if you don't have that hands on type of education with the lecture, you're going to get into an environment where you have this certification that says you know what you're doing, but because the company might do it a little bit differently, you might be afraid to ask questions. And then because you don't want to come across as, well, I went to school for this and now I don't know what I'm doing, so they're going to think that I'm kind of dumb or whatever. Like you're giving them that opportunity to be comfortable with the uncomfortable and then ask questions if they don't know. So that, I think that's really important.
Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly the goal. And that imposter syndrome thing is real. I
Oh.
mean, I still feel it, right? I still have moments where I'm like, oh God, I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
But I try to like reframe it as, okay, we're all going to we're all going to figure this out together. If a student comes to
Yeah.
me with a technical problem and I don't have an easy answer, there's still the 14-year-old in
Yeah.
me that's like, oh God, I'm supposed to be the expert. And so
I don't know
yeah,
what this yeah.
but like as I've gotten older, as I've gotten a little bit more comfortable in my own skin, I've picked up that it's okay to not immediately have the answer, and demonstrating what to do and not how to not lose your cool is
Yeah.
also part of the learning, right? That's part
Yeah.
of what I'm trying to have them walk away from here with.
Well, there are definitely going to be moments too where you lose your cool because, like, if you're on a tight deadline and it's a major project for something you can't figure out this, like, I've seen a lot of engineers like just get so, and I get it, like, it's a lot of pressure, but
Yep.
it'll be okay. You just got to work together. Well, you know, I feel like as a whole industry, we could do a better job supporting community colleges and high schools that are trying to be part of the solution to close the skills gap. So I'm just curious, what are some of the obstacles that you're facing as a teacher, getting either the students to sign up or getting the right resources or opportunities from them to learn? Like what are some of the obstacles you're facing right now?
Yeah, so one big thing for us is just getting word out about the class. I mean, I think this program is amazing and life-changing, and I'm always shocked that we don't have a line around the block trying to sign up for the class. But like I said, we're not for credit, and going back to
Mhm.
that educational code again, that means that we don't get taxpayer money here at TCI. So the community college, the for credit side of MiraCosta College, is publicly funded. We are separately funded. We're funded primarily by just grants and donations. And
Okay.
so we really run with like a skeleton crew here. And so like there's no marketing department, there's no sales team. There are like a few people who work here who do work skills, all the work of work skills besides the teaching of the students. and they are amazing. They're the people who like do all of our purchasing and also like set up all the chairs before an event and do all the high school outreach and fix the toilet and help me read student resumes, and like all of those things fall on just a few people. So as much as like the staff here is really just a group of amazing superstars, it hasn't so far gotten us that line around the block that we think the place should have.
Deserves, yeah.
Yeah. And then I think, you know, like as far as manufacturing at large, I think we struggle with a lot of the same things that that companies do. It's hard for us to get women in the door. It's hard for us to get people from underrepresented groups in the door. I will say this about women: when they do find us and they engage and they can afford the class and they can fit the program into their lives, they are often my strongest students, which is amazing.
Yes.
And so we do everything that we can think of to boost numbers in that area, right? Where we want to try to make sure that the class is diverse and representative of San Diego County at large. And so that's things like, you know, when we're advertising, we're including women in all the imaging and stuff like that, all the way up to we just recently got some money that allows us to offer a stipend to people who are struggling with childcare. Affordable childcare is major around here. So
especially in California.
Yeah, totally. And that, by the way, that stipend is open to anybody. It doesn't matter what gender you are, but we are anticipating it's going to have a bigger impact on women in our community. Just helping people afford the class. That's another big one for us. It's hard to give up 15 weeks of income and pay for this class. The sticker price is $7,000 right now. We have some grant money that allowed us to knock it down to $3,000, but the price varies depending on the availability of funds. And so that's a huge obstacle for us. The credit side of MiraCosta, you can get your associate's degree for free. On the not for credit side, the courses cost money. So that discounted price is still a huge obstacle for people. And it's heartbreaking for me when people come through, like I said, and they're like, this is amazing. I love it here. I feel like this is my place and I want to learn all these things and be part of this world, but I can't. I'm just going to take an evening class because I can't stop working in order to do this.
Yeah.
So for those people, like, we'll keep checking in with them. We'll constantly be looking for funding resources to help offset the cost of the class for them. And we're lucky. I mean, I should mention we have an amazing industry partner, Creative Electron in San Marcos, California. They sponsor a scholarship. So they help foot the bill for students to take the class. They can't pay for everyone, of course, but they have started a scholarship fund, and we're able to prioritize populations that are underrepresented in engineering and manufacturing with that scholarship. We also have some amazing community partners that help students pay for the class. And sometimes they'll even provide the student with like a laptop or clothing for an interview, like whatever they need in order to be successful through the program. But it's not enough for everyone. And so that's really heartbreaking. Those are our big obstacles, just getting people in the door. And then when we get somebody in the door who's excited, helping them get funding so that they can actually enroll.
Gotcha. So I usually close out all of the shows with like your big ask for our audience. So I did have like two questions for you. One is, what sort of help can our audience provide? But that's kind of related to what your big ask can be. But, you know, what would you want to ask our audience if you had a big ask for them?
Yeah. Okay, so first, if you're in San Diego and I already know you and you're one of our industry partners and you're like, man, that place is amazing. Kate teaches a great class there. We've hired so many students. First of all, we're so thankful for your support, and we would ask you to consider becoming a sponsor, right? Go from being a supporter to being a sponsor. Be a Creative Electron for us. Sponsor a student scholarship. Help us pay to get butts and seats, right? We are the pipeline for a lot of North County manufacturing, and we would love to be able to offer the class for free to students, just like they do on the main campus of MiraCosta for the credit side, because that would be amazing and life-changing for us. If you're not in San Diego, first call your friends in San Diego and tell them how amazing we are. And then, here's my big ask. Okay, so if you think that equity in manufacturing is a problem, you have to see that the talent pool is a big part of that. So here's what I want you to do. Get the stakeholders in your organization together. This would be human resources and the engineering team primarily, or your manufacturing manager. And I want you to dig in on the concept of the degree requirement for some of the roles within your organization. And I want you to ask yourself, is the degree really necessary in order to do this work? Or are there like certain skills, certain attributes that we could find elsewhere or that we could train internally? And then here's the next phase of that is don't just have that conversation, but get yourselves aligned. Because here's what happens. Like a lot of times we'll have a student apply for a job and we have situations where human resources within an organization is totally on board with hiring someone that doesn't have an engineering degree, but maybe the engineering manager is like stuck and says, no, we can only have degreed engineers here because of XYZ, because the conversation has never been had, right? We've got the flip side too, where we'll meet the engineering team, they come, they walk through, they're like, oh my God, like my brain is exploding. This is so great. I wish my engineering school had been like this. But our applicants aren't reaching the engineering team because HR is filtering them out because they don't have the degree listed on their resume. So get aligned, have that conversation, and then find your local technical training program. If you don't have one, call your local community college and ask them to start one, and partner with that group and offer the students their tours of your company, offer them your scrap. A lot of schools are struggling for funding, struggling for resources. In California, especially among these not-for-credit programs, these work skills training programs, we're all competing for the same funds. We're all running off grants. And as excited as I am for some of my colleagues at other schools when they get grants that get them, amazing things, if they get it, it means we didn't get it. So just be aware that we're not just like funded off the taxpayer dollar. We're struggling to get the funds from wherever we can. And my hope is that that's going to come from our industry partnerships eventually, that's our source of sustenance, that these industry people who are receiving our students, hiring them, loving them, are going to turn around and give back to us to make the program sustainable.
Yeah, I think that's a great ask because, like you said, you're competing for those grants. I did talk to another community college in Virginia, and they said flat out there is a school right across the street from us, and they win most of the stuff these grants are for, and it's because they have a massive support system. So a lot of our students feel like they're not worthy of some of these things, and I'm like, well, that's got to change. Like, so I really feel like companies who need the workforce should reconsider some of their budget strategies as well too, and put some of that budget towards either donating or funding some of these community college efforts, because it would be a huge help for sure. We do have a couple other comments. Joe Reynolds, this sounds like a wonderful organization. I don't know if this is my nephew, because I have a nephew called Jax, and he says, love the show. So thank you.
Nice.
And then the best engineers that I've worked with don't have degrees. So this is funny. One of my friends, her name is Jessica, she posted a LinkedIn post, and it was called Corporate Math versus some other kind of math. And it was basically saying, this is what corporate math is. Corporate math is requiring a certain degree, but then only paying this type of salary, or looking for these qualifications. And it was such a funny video, because it's like, all of this is so true. So I really like how you suggested, reevaluate some of this stuff. Is it necessary? And then, yes, let's align with all of the departments and make sure the right candidates are getting through, because you don't always necessarily need that degree. Like, if you have the experience, especially the hands-on experience, and you're really good at problem solving and adapting, think we need a lot of that right now in our sector. So, well, Kate, I just want to say thank you again for joining me today. This is a really fun conversation. I love everything that you're doing. I love your teaching style and your personality. And I did want to ask you one more question, because you are a mom and you left the industry but then came back. What advice would you give to other moms who are kind of questioning, their life path? Like, what would you do to pitch this sector to them? Because I get asked that a lot. They're like, how do you juggle it with being a mom and everything? And I'm like, I just find a way, because it's so fun. Like, it's just really fun. So what advice would you give moms that are considering the sector?
So, I mean, when I took a career break, I was doing things that were expanding my skill set, that maybe expending it in a way that wouldn't have happened if I had been in industry for those years, right? Like, I definitely picked up a lot of problem solving skills during those years, got better at dealing with people, learned some patience, some perseverance, right? So I'll tell you what I tell my students. I think everybody has a unique path that they're on, and it takes kind of introspection, and it takes like kind of working on, I think, your own self-respect to do this. But I think if you can write a narrative that includes your unique background, whether that's, I worked as a bartender for 5 years, or I took 5 years off to raise a family, you will find that you are better qualified for some roles than you would have been if you had been in industry for all that time. There's actually a great book I would recommend along these lines. It's called Edge. It's by Laura Huang. And she talks about this exactly, right? Like, what is your special sauce? What is it about you and your background that make you uniquely qualified to do something? Like, sometimes I have students who have been, like the example of the bartender, right? And they don't necessarily want to put that on their resume, either because they're like, they think it's not relevant, right? Like, it doesn't matter that I was a bartender, or they see it as like, even, I don't know, like embarrassing, right? Like, they don't want to advertise that they were a bartender because they have this sense that it was like career time wasted or something. And I think a lot of us feel that way about a career break as well. Like, you have this kind of like self-consciousness about it. But I know a bartender makes an amazing conversationalist, right? They become great communicators. They're amazingly focused in a busy environment. They're going to be good listeners, right? So if you can think of the something like that, right, like a bartender, and say, oh, well, there are all of these attributes that you built up during your time bartending that are going to make you better in industry, right? Maybe you can go into a role like field support, where there is an element of technical service, of technical work, but also an element of customer service. I would encourage anybody, but especially a mom who's taking a career break, to think of their time off in that context, right? What did I do that changed what I would put on my resume for like my soft skills, my experiences, and then find a company that's willing to see the whole picture of you, and then when you get into that company, be the company that's willing to see that whole picture of somebody and entertain the notion that somebody comes from a non-traditional background and they can be very highly qualified despite not having ticked the box of whatever it is you imagine they might have ticked the box during those years. I think we can all do that, right? Whether you've been a bartender or a mom, or you've just been in industry, we're all on these like unique paths. And if you can kind of like do the work and have the self-awareness that it takes to figure out where your unique narrative could maybe take you, right? Imagine your story so far and think like, what could the ending or what could the continuation of that story be? That can really help you envision a goal for yourself that maybe isn't immediately obvious, but it takes work, takes self-awareness and some humility, right?
I love that. Well, thank you for sharing that. And the book, again, is called Edge by Laura Wong. So make sure to check that out too. So Kate, thank you again. I really appreciate that. And to all who tuned in and dropped comments, thank you. I hope you all have a wonderful weekend, and stay tuned for a brief message from my sponsor of this episode. Take care, everyone. Bye. This episode of Mavens of Manufacturing has been sponsored by Z Ink Solutions. Z-Ink Solutions. This isn't your grandmother's copywriting service. We provide copywriting and copy editing services that provide impactful text and memorable storytelling for a variety of brands and industries. Contact us today at zincssolutions.com. That's z-inksolutions.com.